I hesitate to get into a tit for tat in terms of response, but I would just note that we are working very hard to respond to Mr. Levine's issues and complaints and grievances. I would tell you that it's a heavy load to do that because they come in a very, the pipeline is pretty full, and so we are limited in our abilities to do that. I apologize if there's any delays. I do commit to you that we will be getting responses to every one of those, and I know the staff is working on them. But again, we don't have sort of full-time people to respond, one by one to one advocate. We do have an ongoing forum through the Committee for Accessible Transportation for these issues. Many of these issues are being addressed at the CAT at a regular basis, and I think there's a good forum to discuss our policies associated with that. Finally, I would note that the opening of the assessment center in the Old Town area on Fifth Avenue was a step forward for us and was reviewed fully with the Committee on Accessible Transportation. It does mean that people will need to be, will go through the assessment center. And as those personal interviews and assessments are done, there will be some controversy associated with that. Some people will be told no. That's, I think, the fundamental piece of it. But this is not a financial issue for us. This is not fundamentally driven by money. This is fundamentally driven by fairness and equity and treating people well. I might also note there are a number of both equipment and personnel safety issues that are involved in some of the issues that Mr. Levine has brought to us. I've spent a reasonable amount of time in my few weeks here actually reviewing those with the staff, and I think that they're a group committed to service to people who are elderly with disabilities. Absolutely committed to a good service and doing everything they can, even bending the rules when necessary. But there are points where it simply is above and beyond the capacity of the equipment or the capacity of our staff to handle it. And so we're very cautious about getting ourselves in a situation that's dangerous for the lift client or for staff. And we have to be very cognizant of that as we progress this program. And so we will get back to Michael related to all of the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Rick, 10 seconds, please. One, I was vice chair of CAT at the time that there was a discussion on this facility. We were very afraid of this facility as CAT members. Lots of concerns. We wanted to know who was going to be making the decisions, and I still want to know who's making the decisions. And every one of these issues that I have brought up, as far as lift paratransit service, TriMet has been delivering the service for years. Thank you.
I have a comment, Mr. Chairman. Michael, Mary was accommodated. I got a call back from Member Kelly, and they accommodated Mary as far as they did not.
They did not.
Because I got a call that said they reinforced one of the vans, and so
as of yesterday, when I spoke to Mary, that's not the case.
I was told this.
Well, I talked to Mary yesterday.
I'm sorry to hear that, but no, it has to be said. Well, Mr. Chairman, we're going to take the time because these people with disability, they're for the grace of God and alive. I'm very concerned with how we treat disability here, and we can take the time to hear these people. And I think we should, but I was told that Mary was accommodated because she was just over the 600-pound limit.
614 pounds.
Yeah, and we had talked about it, and I know that my fellow board member here talked about we have to be concerned with safety on this side too. On the concern of we can't haul somebody unsafely. But okay, I'm going to follow up. Mike, I will follow up because I was told that we had made accommodations.
And Lynn, I thank you.
And I don't appreciate being told something.
And you've been a great supporter of people with disabilities since you've been on the board. And things have got to change. Things are getting worse, folks. They're getting worse. The disability community, I know there's a letter coming from the newly formed, if not already arrived, Portland Commission on Disabilities, which is based out of Amanda Fritz's office. I didn't bother to send a letter from my committee. It could be the same old thing I've been sharing with you. I think you're going to hear from DSAC. I hope you're going to hear from Disability Rights Oregon. This is getting very serious, folks, and the fact that Neil says that they're understaffed when it's mandated, it's in your packet that they have to have a grievance procedure, and they're not even following the policy on that. How do we believe they're going to take care of us in any other way if they can't even answer us? Thank you.
All right. Next, we have two representatives from Opal, and we ask them to come up together, if that's okay. Gracie Bartley and Joseph Santos Lyons.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair, members of the TriMet Board, and the General Manager, Neil. My name is Joseph Santos Lyons. I'm the co-director with Opal Environmental Justice Oregon, and I also staff the writers, our Bus Riders Unite community group. First, I want to start by just thanking the board for responding to the concerns of community members and groups, including Opal, by updating your policies around public involvement at your board meetings and ensuring that voices are heard on matters of budget and policy decisions before votes are taken. Thank you very much for clarifying that. As you know, Opal Bus Riders Unite held a demonstration with over 100 riders and community leaders on September 1st to draw attention to the fare increase in service cuts. It's the 10th fare increase in 10 years. It's another 100,000 hours of bus service cut in the system, not to mention light rail reductions. So we applaud your leadership again in working to minimize the impacts on transit-dependent communities. We know you've been working very hard to try and ensure that is done, but we still believe more needs to be done. We recognize that you're making political decisions when you prioritize other spending before maintaining service. You're making a political decision when you choose non-essential spending before providing a basic floor of service for transit-dependent communities. It's a political decision to borrow against future payroll tax and passenger revenues to pay for new capital construction, forcing higher costs on the most vulnerable. And it's a political decision to make these choices with few, if any, voices and meaningful public involvement of those who will be most impacted by the changes. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation's overview of environmental justice in transportation, transportation agencies cannot fully meet community needs without the active participation of well-informed, empowered individuals and community groups, not just businesses and academic institutions. In TriMet service districts, and backed up by media reports that came in light of our rally for the bus, this region lacks well-informed, empowered, and engaged community members and groups, particularly from transit-dependent communities, people living in poverty, and communities of color. We want to work together to ensure that service hours are restored, that the fare increases are repealed, and in a region where collaboration is a value, we hope that you will work closely with our bus riders. Our volunteers and organizers connected with over 1,000 riders this summer, particularly in the working class neighborhoods of East Multnomah County. Overwhelmingly, people did not know about the fare increase and the service cuts. Language barriers are growing amongst our growing immigrant and refugee population, economic barriers with the recession and people living in poverty, and other barriers from living in a forgotten part of our region where land use and transportation planning tends to lack meaningful public involvement. These all contribute to the disparities that we're facing. Your bus riders are the backbone of your system. We want you to help educate them and involve them. Lastly, after 5 months, our Bus Riders Unite leadership team is still educating ourselves about your budget, your policies, and exploring alternatives to the political decisions that have placed a heavy burden on this region's transit-dependent communities. For TriMet to work well, we need a meaningful space where rider concerns and ideas can be taken seriously, and where the impact of decisions are viewed through a lens of equity and civil rights. We've appreciated the positive communication with many TriMet staff, from drivers to administrative staff, and will join TriMet in advocating with regional, state, and federal lawmakers. With our small budget and our big hearts, Opal's Bus Riders Unite promises to offer consistent, thoughtful, and constructive alternatives with an equity lens. We hope that as a board, you will continue to hold yourselves accountable for the decisions that you make and demonstrate leadership for the most vulnerable in our community who depend every day on public transportation. Thank you.
Members of the board. My name is Grace Bentley, and I'm a community organizer with Opal Environmental Justice Oregon. And as you know, we work with low-income communities of color primarily to educate and empower them to be able to participate in transit-related decisions and advocate on behalf of their interests. And a primary concern of ours is that TriMet is embarking on a massive capital investment projects, and instead of investing in operations, namely bus service, which is the backbone of our system and the main source of transit for many low-income families. It's a legitimate question whether TriMet should be spending so much money on these projects at a time when you are raising fares and cutting service. The Portland to Milwaukee Light Rail Project, aka the Orange Line, is an example of these financial priorities that disadvantage bus riders. The project requires an unreasonable amount of money for real estate purchase, $56 million in the fiscal year 2010 alone, and it uses $40 million of future payroll tax revenue. In fact, board member Lehrbach raised these concerns back in June, moving to suspend land purchases until all the money was accounted for. And the motion died without a second. And just to refresh the board's collective memory, many community members in attendance that day echoed Mr. Lehrbach's concerns. And we're just wondering how the board is going to be accountable for this community input. As we all know, the FDA only approved a 50% budget allocation instead of the hoped for 60%, resulting in a $135 million budget shortfall. And as a result, TriMet is anticipating some creative money grabs up for this shortfall, including approximately $55 million from unidentified local resources. Where is this money going to come from? And on behalf of Opal and our bus riders, the message should be loud and clear that enough is enough, and there should be no more bleeding of our bus system. This board and TriMet need to be more transparent and accountable for these actions, and need to clearly show the community how they plan to fund this project without jeopardizing bus operations, because we expect TriMet to prioritize the bus system, and we expect to hear your plan for how you're going to repeal the recent fare increase and restore bus service. And I would like to also add that as an Opal employee and a lifelong TriMet bus rider, my average day consists of listening to frustrated bus riders as well as being one. And just during this meeting, actually, my partner, who has only recently become employed after 2 months of job hunting in this really messed up economy, just got passed up by a bus on its way to his second day of work. And Opal hears these kinds of stories on a daily basis because so many people are dependent on a good bus system to meet basic needs like getting to work on time, getting to appointments on time. And by the end of the day, after getting home from work off the bus, all I can think about is how badly I need to get a car. Thank you.
Thank you.